By the time my uncle stood up at the founders' dinner and said I was not real blood, the champagne had already been poured. The cameras were already recording. The employees were already smiling. And the contract that made me majority owner of the company was already sitting inside a sealed envelope under my chair. Nobody noticed it. Not my uncle, not my cousins, not even my mother, who kept staring at her plate like silence could protect me. But when I finally opened that envelope and placed one document on the table, the room stopped celebrating the family business and started calculating who actually owned it. My name is Viola Carter, and this is the story of how my family tried to erase me from the company my grandfather built, only to find out he had left me the part they could not touch. Carter and Hale Specialty Foods sat on the south side of Atlanta, Georgia, inside a renovated brick warehouse with tall black windows, polished concrete floors, and the smell of roasted pecans, brown sugar, smoked paprika, and money. That was the part nobody said out loud. Money had a smell. In our building, it smelled like sealed crates, fresh labels, coffee, invoices, and ambition. We supplied private label sauces, spice blends, candied nuts, and gift baskets to hotels, boutique grocery chains, airports, and corporate clients across the Southeast. The business had started with my grandfather, Elijah Carter, selling smoked peach barbecue sauce out of the back of a pickup truck at farmers markets. By the time I was 29, Carter and Hale had 3 warehouses, 86 employees, and contracts with hotels from Atlanta to Nashville. And still, somehow, whenever the family talked about the company, they spoke like I was a guest, a visitor, a grateful little shadow allowed to sit at the table, because my mother had married into the Carters, not been born into them. My mother, Denise, married my father, Michael Carter, when I was 5. Michael adopted me when I was 7. My last name became Carter before I even understood what a last name could cost. He was the only father I ever knew. He packed my lunches. He taught me how to ride a bike in the church parking lot. He came to every school play even when I only had one line and said it too early. He showed me how to read invoices when I was 13 and told me, "Numbers don't gossip, Viola. They either balance or they confess." Sudden, brutal, unfair. After that, my grandfather became my anchor. Grandpa Elijah never treated me like an extra branch on the family tree. He treated me like a root. "You are my granddaughter," he would say whenever some distant cousin tried to get cute. "Anybody confused about that can take it up with the Lord and the paperwork." He had a way of smiling when he said things like that. Soft face. Steel underneath. When I graduated from Georgia State with a business degree, he gave me a job at Carter and Hale. Not a fake job. Not one of those family positions where you wear heels, carry a tablet, and take pictures for the company page. He put me in operations, inventory, vendor management, client fulfillment, shipping errors, angry buyers, broken pallets, spoiled batches, the ugly side of a pretty brand. You want to inherit anything, he told me on my first day. Inherit responsibility first, so I did. I came early, stayed late, learned which suppliers inflated freight charges, which grocery buyers paid slow, which seasonal products moved fastest, which gift basket designs photographed well but shipped terribly. I learned the business from the floor upward. My cousin Blake learned it from the golf course downward. Blake Carter was my Uncle Raymond's oldest son. Tall, expensive smile, soft hands, loud watch. He had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no by anybody whose opinion mattered to him. He called employees the help when he thought nobody important was listening. He called mistakes learning curves when he made them and incompetence when anyone else did. And he called me Vi like we were close. We were not close. We were related by paperwork, history, and tension. My Uncle Raymond was worse. Raymond Carter had been Grandpa Elijah's younger brother's son, which made him my father's cousin. But in family businesses, titles matter less than proximity to power. Raymond had worked beside Grandpa Elijah for 20 years. He knew the vendors, the old clients, the bank managers, the church donors, the country club crowd. He was smooth in public, cruel in private. He could hug you with one hand and measure your replacement with the other. For years, he acted like I was useful but temporary. Viola is sharp, he would tell people, smiling. She keeps things organized. Organized. That was the word people used when they wanted to praise a woman without admitting she was strategic. I was not just organized. I was the reason Carter and Hale survived the pandemic supply chain mess. I was the reason we switched packaging vendors before the first price spike hit. I was the reason we landed the Ashford Grand Hotels contract, which became our biggest account. I was the reason our holiday fulfillment error rate dropped from 11.8% to 2.3% in 18 months. But at family dinners, Blake was the future. I was such a hard worker. There is a difference. A future gets protected. A hard worker gets used. The first warning came on a Tuesday morning in March. We were preparing for the Ashford Grand Renewal presentation, a deal worth $3.7 million over 3 years. I had built the entire operational proposal, delivery schedule, pricing model, seasonal product rotation, shrinkage reduction, and a custom emergency replacement clause that solved the exact complaint Ashford had raised the year before. When the meeting invite came through, my name was not on it. Blake's was. Raymond's was. 2 sales directors were included. Even Marcy from finance was included, but not me. I stared at the calendar invite for 20 seconds, waiting for the anger to arrive. It did not arrive first. First came the old habit. The one where you explain disrespect away because admitting the truth means you have to do something about it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Blake forgot. Maybe Raymond assumed I was already included. Maybe professionalism meant not making everything personal. So I emailed Blake. Hey, noticed I'm not on the Ashford renewal meeting invite. Since I built the operations model, please add me. He replied 6 minutes later. Got you, Vay. Oversight. Oversight, a sweet little word for a deliberate little cut. He added me. Then, later that afternoon, he walked past my office with 2 coffees in his hand and said, "Don't worry, you'll get your flowers." I looked up. Flowers die, Blake. Credit lasts longer. He laughed like I had made a joke. I had not. For a few days, things seemed fine. That was the false comfort. Blake complimented my model in front of the sales team. Raymond asked me to sit beside him during prep. My mother told me, "See, sometimes you read too much into things." Maybe she wanted that to be true. Maybe she needed that to be true. Because when your child keeps getting cut by the same family, and you stay, you start praying the knife was imaginary. The second warning came during the actual Ashford presentation. We were in the upstairs conference room. Glass walls, long walnut table, a screen on the far end. Branded water bottles lined up like soldiers. 2 Ashford executives joined by Zoom, and one, a woman named Clara Benton, came in person. Clara was their VP of Hospitality Procurement. Smart woman, sharp eyes. The kind of person who reads a room before she reads a slide. Blake stood at the front, wearing a navy suit and the smile of a man about to spend someone else's work. As I developed this new fulfillment model, he began. My fingers froze on my pen as I developed. Not as we developed, not as Viola developed. As I developed, he clicked to slide 4. My slide, my chart. Coded risk map, he said. I realized Ashford did not need a discount. They needed reliability with accountability. That was my line. I had said it in the prep meeting, word for word. Raymond did not look at me. That told me everything. Sometimes betrayal does not shock you because it is unexpected. Sometimes it shocks you because part of you was waiting for it and still hoped you were wrong. Clara Benton looked from the screen to me, just once. Teeny movement, almost nothing. But I caught it. When Blake stumbled over the emergency replacement clause, Clara asked, "Can you explain how the 72, how a replacement reserve is calculated?" Blake clicked his pen. Absolutely. It's based on average seasonal volume, adjusted against spoilage projections, and regional demand elasticity. That sounded intelligent. It was also useless. Clara's face did not change. It is based on Ashford's prior 12-month shortage pattern by property tier, then reduced by the new batch rotation schedule. The 72-hour reserve only applies to premium baskets and high-margin sauces, not standard dry goods. That keeps inventory lean without exposing your flagship properties. The room went quiet. Clara smiled. There it is, she said. Blake's jaw tightened. Raymond gave me a look, not gratitude, warning. After the meeting, Ashford renewed. 3 years. $3.7 million. Everyone celebrated. Raymond clapped Blake on the shoulder in front of the team and said, "That's why this boy is ready. This boy. Ready." I stood 5 feet away holding the printed backup packet Blake had not read. Lighter. In the hallway, I asked Raymond if we could talk. He sighed like I was a bill he had already paid. I said. Blake presented my work as his. Raymond smiled without warmth. Family wins together. Then family should credit together. His smile disappeared. Be careful, Viola. With what? With confusing contribution for ownership. There it was. The sentence beneath every sentence. The bloodline border. The invisible fence. I looked him in the eye and said, "I know exactly what I contributed." He leaned closer. "But do you know what you own?" That night, I sat in my car outside the warehouse for almost 30 minutes. Rain slid down the windshield, turning the building lights into blurry gold lines. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Please don't fight with Raymond. Your grandfather would want peace." I laughed once, not because it was funny. Because peace is always requested from the person bleeding, never from the person holding the blade. I typed back, then deleted it. Typed again, then deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "I'm not fighting. I'm checking paperwork." I did not know yet how important that sentence would become. The public humiliation came 3 weeks later. Carter and Hale hosted its annual Founders Legacy Dinner every April, right before spring ordering season. It was part celebration, part client event, part family theater. The room was beautiful that year. White tablecloths, gold candles, framed black and white photos of Grandpa Elijah on the walls, a jazz trio near the bar, employees dressed up, clients mingling, local press taking pictures for a business profile. At the center of the room sat a large display board covered in photos. Grandpa at his first farmer's market booth, Grandpa shaking hands with hotel buyers, Grandpa standing beside my father, Michael, both of them wearing aprons and laughing. There were photos of Raymond, photos of Blake, photos of almost every Carter. There was one photo of me, bottom corner, half hidden by a flower arrangement. I noticed. Of course I noticed. Women like me become experts at seeing where we have been minimized. The dinner began well enough. Speeches, toasts, stories. Raymond talked about legacy. Blake talked about innovation. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin when they played a short tribute video of Grandpa Elijah. Then Raymond called Blake to the stage. Not me. Blake walked up, smiling like a campaign poster. Raymond put an arm around him and said, "Every family business reaches a moment where the next generation must step forward." People clapped. My stomach went cold. Raymond continued, "Tonight, I am proud to announce that Blake Carter will be assuming the newly created role of Chief Growth Officer, helping lead Carter and Hale into its next chapter." More applause. Blake waved modestly, which is what arrogant people do when they want humility photographed. Then Raymond said, "This company has always been about blood, sacrifice, and family." His eyes found mine. I felt it before he said it, that little shift in the air when cruelty puts on a suit. "And while we appreciate everyone who has contributed over the years," Raymond said, "some roles require people who understand this legacy from the inside. Real blood, real history, real responsibility." The room did not fully understand, but the family table did. My cousin Tasha looked down. My mother closed her eyes. Raymond raised his glass. To real blood. That was when half the room clapped and the other half waited to see if they were supposed to. I did not move. I did not cry. I did not shout. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap and listened to a man use my grandfather's memory to cut me out of my father's family. Then Blake took the microphone. "I also want to thank Vias," he said, looking directly at me. "She's been helpful behind the scenes. Every family needs good support." Support, that word landed harder than the insult. Because support is what people call the foundation when they want the roof to get the credit. I smiled. Just a little, not happy. Not polite. Just enough to make Blake uncertain. Because I had learned something from Grandpa Elijah. Never interrupt a person while they are signing their own confession. The hidden receipt had started with a locked cabinet. After my text to my mother, I called Mr. Arthur Bell, the company's old attorney. He was semi-retired, 74, and still wore suspenders like he was arguing cases in 1988. Mr. Bell had handled Grandpa Elijah's estate planning before he died. When I called, his voice softened. "Viola Carter," he said. I wondered when you would ask. That sentence made my skin prickle. Ask what? About the ownership file. I sat up straighter. What ownership file? There was a pause. Then he said, "Come by my office tomorrow, bring identification, and bring patience." The next day, I drove to a small law office in Decatur with brick steps and old oak floors. Mr. Bell met me in a conference room with a banker's box already on the table. He did not start with drama. Old lawyers do not need drama. They have documents. He opened the box and removed a blue folder. "Your grandfather updated the company structure 5 years before his death," he said. "Raymond knows part of this. I suspect he hoped you did not." My throat tightened. What part? Mr. Bell slid the first document across the table, amended operating agreement. Carter and Hale Specialty Foods, LLC. I read slowly. Then read again. My eyes stopped on one line. Class of voting units, 51%. Viola Denise Carter, held in trust until age 30, transferable upon trustee certification. I looked up. I own 51%. You do now, Mr. Bell said. Your 30th birthday was last month. The room tilted. Not physically, spiritually. Like the floor had been there the whole time, but somebody had finally turned on the light. I whispered, "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Your grandfather wanted you working in the business before you knew what you owned. He feared if you knew too early, the family would either flatter you or fight you before you were ready." That sounds like him. It was very much him. Mr. Bell handed me another document. A letter. Grandpa Elijah's handwriting. My hands shook before I even opened it. "Viola, if you are reading this, then the time has come for you to know what I knew early. Family is not always who shares your blood. Sometimes family is who carries the weight when the bloodline gets lazy. I built Carter and Hale for workers, not princes. Raymond understands power, but you understand responsibility. Michael loved you as his daughter. I loved you as my granddaughter. Anyone who says different is selling pride because they ran out of truth. I left you control because control without character destroys a business. You have character. Use it. Do not beg for a seat at a table you can legally move." Grandpa covered my mouth, not because I wanted to cry, because if I opened it, something ancient inside me might escape. Mr. Bell waited. When I finally looked up, he said, "There is more." There was always more. He showed me the trust certification, transfer documents, tax filings, K-1 records, banking resolutions, and a board consent signed years ago. Raymond had 24%. Blake had nothing directly, only a promised future through Raymond. My mother had 10%. 2 minority investors held the rest, but voting control belonged to me, 51%. Not symbolic, not emotional. Grandpa had not left me a chair. He left me the table. "Does Raymond know?" I asked. "He knows your grandfather made provisions. I do not believe he has seen the final trust release. He asked twice. I declined twice. What happens now? Now you decide whether you want peace or governance." I thought about Raymond's hallway warning. "Do you know what you own?" I thought about Blake stealing my presentation. I thought about my mother begging me not to fight. I thought about Grandpa's letter, then I said, "Both, but in that order only if they give me the first one." They did not give me peace. The week after I learned the truth, I began the investigation phase. Not because ownership alone was not enough. It was. But I did not want to walk into that room with only power. I wanted proof of why the power had to be used. So I gathered everything. The Ashford presentation file history showed I created the deck, the risk model, and the replacement clause. Blake had copied it to his folder 2 hours before the meeting and changed the author name. Slack messages showed he asked one of the sales coordinators, "Can you remove Vi from the final PDF?" Raymond wants clean exec branding. Emails showed Raymond telling finance not to include my name in the Ashford renewal bonus allocation because, quote, Blake led the account. Meeting notes from Clara Benton's assistant listed me as operations lead who clarified reserve model. The client call recording transcript showed Clara asking that future operational details come through me because I understood the fulfillment risk better than anyone else on the call. Then I found the uglier part. A draft org chart. Blake as chief growth officer. Me moved under him as operations support manager. Authority reduced. Reporting line changed. Beside my name, Raymond had written, useful, but not ownership material. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Useful, but not ownership material. The arrogance was almost artistic. Like watching a man write his own punchline and forget who owned the paper. The subplot arrived through Marcy Quinn from finance. Marcy had worked at Carter and Hale for 11 years. Quiet woman, silver glasses. 2 sons in college. Knew every invoice, every reimbursement, every executive lunch that got coded as client development, even when no client was present. She came to my office late one evening and closed the door. I heard what Raymond said at the dinner rehearsal, she whispered. Dinner rehearsal, she looked surprised. You didn't know. Number, they practiced parts of the announcement yesterday. Blake joked that after Friday, you'd finally understand the family order. I felt something in me go still, not numb, focused. Marcy placed a folder on my desk. I shouldn't have printed this. Then why did you? Because your grandfather was kind to me when my husband died. And because Blake tried to make payroll delay warehouse overtime last Christmas, so his bonus pool looked better. Inside the folder were internal finance notes, bonus manipulation, misallocated account credit, a planned leadership restructuring, and one email from Raymond to Blake. After Founders Dinner Blake, once the announcement is public, we move quickly. Viola may push back emotionally, but she has no real standing if we frame this as legacy continuity. Keep praise polite. Do not engage on ownership language. Arthur Bell is old but careful. Avoid written references to equity until I confirm. No real standing. That was the moment my identity shifted. Not when they insulted me. Not when they stole my work. Not even when I found out I owned 51%. It happened when I realized they were not accidentally disrespecting me. They had built a whole plan around my silence. That night, I stopped asking why they kept treating me like I did not belong. I started asking what would happen when they discovered belonging was not the question. Control was. The fractionation started after that. Positive. I had ownership documents. Negative. Raymond was preparing to restructure me. Positive. Marcy gave me finance proof. Negative. Blake announced his new title to employees before the dinner. Positive. Clara Benton emailed me directly asking for a follow-up operational call. Negative. Raymond intercepted the client reply and told me all Ashford communications should go through Blake. Positive. Mr. Bell confirmed he could attend the founders' dinner as my legal representative if needed. Negative. My mother called crying. Please, she said, don't embarrass the family. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the city lights outside my window. Mom, I said softly, they are embarrassing the family. You know what I mean. Yes. You mean don't expose it. She went quiet. I softened my voice because she had lost a husband, a father-in-law, and maybe part of herself trying to survive these people. I love you, I said, but I will not keep shrinking so they can keep pretending the room is bigger. She whispered, your father would hate this. No, I said. My father would hate what made this necessary. The villain overplayed his hand 2 hours before the founders' dinner. Blake sent an email to the senior team. He meant to send it only to Raymond. But arrogance makes people careless. The email read, Dad says after tonight we start transitioning Ashford fully under me. V-Tan handle warehouse execution until we find someone less emotionally attached. Make sure she doesn't get copied on equity or board documents. Last thing we need is her thinking adoption paperwork makes her a Carter. He sent it to the senior leadership distribution list, including me, for 31 seconds. Nobody replied. Then Blake tried to recall it. That was funnier than an apology. A recalled email is just a confession wearing a panic button. I screenshotted it, downloaded it, forwarded it to Mr. Bell. Then I replied to Blake and Raymond only, received. That was all one word, small action, massive consequence. At the dinner, I wore black, not funeral black, decision black. A tailored dress, low heels, pearl earrings, Grandpa Elijah had given me when I graduated college. In my purse were printed copies of the operating agreement, trust release, Grandpa's letter, Blake's email, the Ashford file history, the finance notes, and the draft org chart. Under my chair, placed there by Mr. Bell before the event began, was a sealed envelope containing the certified ownership documents. I did not tell anyone. Not even my mother, especially not my mother. Because sometimes people who love you still leak your strength to the people they fear. Raymond made his speech. Blake accepted his new role. The real blood toast happened. The room clapped. My humiliation completed its circle. Then Raymond said, "Before we close, I want to invite our family members to stand for a photo beneath Elijah's portrait. Bloodline, legacy, continuity." Blake looked at me and smiled. "Family members," he repeated. The table went quiet. My mother whispered, "Viola." I stood, not fast, not dramatic, just stood. Raymond's smile tightened. "Viola, we'll do staff photos afterward." There it was. The reversal had opened its door. I looked at him and said, "I'm not standing for the staff photo." A few people turned. The photographer lowered his camera. Raymond chuckled for the room. "Tonight is not the time." I reached beneath my chair and picked up the sealed envelope. "You're right," I said. "It's overdue." Blake's smile faded first. Raymond recognized the envelope, not because he knew exactly what was inside, because men like Raymond can smell paperwork they failed to control. "Viola," he said, voice low. I walked to the front of the room, not to the stage, to the founder's table beneath Grandpa Elijah's portrait. That mattered. If they wanted legacy, we were going to stand under the man who created it. I placed the envelope on the table and opened it. The room became so quiet I could hear the candle flame flicker. I removed one document, certified trust release and voting unit transfer. Then I looked at Blake. "You said this business was for real blood only." His face flushed. I didn't say that. The screen behind him still showed the event slideshow. I nodded to Marcy. She clicked once. The slide changed. Blake's email appeared on the screen. "Last thing we need is her thinking adoption paperwork makes her a Carter." Gasps moved through the room like wind through dry leaves. Blake turned white. Raymond snapped. And Marcy did not move. I said, "Number, leave it up." Raymond stepped toward me. "You are making a scene." "No," I said. "You scheduled one." I brought subtitles. That line hit the room, not loud, but deep. The kind of sentence that makes people stop breathing because it names exactly what they were watching. I placed the certified ownership document beside the microphone. My grandfather, Elijah Carter, amended the operating agreement of Carter Hale Specialty Foods 5 years before his death. Upon my 30th birthday, the trust holding his class of voting units released those units to me. Raymond's face hardened. Private family matters should not be. I lifted the document. "I own 40 of Carter Hale." The room did not gasp this time. It froze. Some silences are empty. This one was full of math. Blake looked at Raymond. Raymond looked at Mr. Bell, who had appeared near the side wall like an old courtroom ghost. Mr. Bell gave one polite nod, the kind that said, "Please lie, I packed exhibits." Raymond tried to recover. "This is more complicated than she is presenting." Mr. Bell stepped forward. "It is not." 3 words. Clean. Fatal. Raymond's mouth opened, then closed. I continued. "The operating agreement gives majority voting control to the holder of Class A units. That is me. The trust release is certified. The tax filings are consistent. The company council was notified. The bank resolution can be updated Monday morning." Blake whispered, "This is insane." I looked at him. "No, Blake. Insane was stealing my work. insulting my father's adoption of me, and doing it all inside a company you did not own. His lips parted. Nothing came out. The receipt spoke next. I did not over-explain. I let the screen do what truth does best when lies have been loud too long. Slide 1. Ashford presentation metadata, created by Viola Carter. Last modified by Blake Carter. Slide 2. Slack message. Can you remove E from the final PDF? Raymond wants clean exec branding. Slide 3. Clara Benton's meeting notes. Viola Carter. Operations lead clarified replacement reserve model. Slide 4, draft org chart. Viola Carter, operations support manager. Useful, but not ownership material. The room reacted to that one. A low murmur, an ugly wave of recognition. Because even people who tolerate politics hate seeing the handwriting. Raymond said, "Those documents are taken out of context." I almost smiled. "Then give us the context where not ownership material becomes respectful." He said nothing. "Because some sentences are coffins. Once you build them, you have to live inside them." Then I placed Grandpa's letter on the table. I did not read all of it. Some things were mine, but I read one line. "Anyon who says different is selling pride because they ran out of truth." My mother began to cry. Not loudly, quietly. Like something inside her had finally stopped pretending. I looked at her, and for a second, I was 7 again, wanting her to choose me before peace. This time, she did. She stood. Raymond turned toward her. "Denise, sit down." My mother wiped her face. "No, one word, small, late, but real." "I watched Michael love that girl," she said, voice trembling. "I watched Elijah love her. I watched all of you use her, and I let fear call itself peace for too long." Raymond stared at her like betrayal was only betrayal when it happened to him. Blake tried to laugh. "Okay, this has gotten emotional. Maybe we all need to go somewhere private." That was the collapse. Not shouting, not tears. The sudden desperate need for privacy from people who had publicly humiliated me. I turned to him. "You were comfortable with public when you thought I had no power." He swallowed. I looked back at the room. As majority owner, effective immediately, Blake Carter's appointment as Chief Growth Officer is suspended pending internal review. Raymond Carter's executive authority is also suspended pending review by outside counsel and finance. Raymond's face darkened. "You cannot do that tonight," Mr. Bell said. "She can," Marcy added. "I have already preserved the relevant finance records." Clara Benton, who had been sitting at a client table near the back, stood slowly. Nobody expected her to speak. That made it better. "As Ashford's representative," she said, "I want to make our position clear. Our renewal was based heavily on the operational model Ms. Carter built and explained. We would prefer direct continuity with her leadership." Blake looked physically smaller. That was the thing about stolen credit. It makes you look tall until the real architect walks in. Then the ceiling changes height. Raymond tried one last move. Elijah would be ashamed of this. I looked up at Grandpa's portrait, then back at Raymond. No, he prepared for this. I placed my hand on the ownership document. "You thought blood made you permanent. Grandpa knew character should make someone responsible." The room held still. I said, "This company will not be run like a family throne. It will be run like a business. Employees will be credited. Clients will not be misled. Leadership will be earned. And nobody in this room will ever again use adoption as an insult inside a company built by a man who understood love better than blood." That was when the applause started, not from the family table,